Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and looked out at the stars. He had been doing this job for 30 years now, traveling from one star system to another, helping different species solve their problems without fighting. It was good work. Important work. But lately, Jake felt tired. The ship was called Horizon's Dawn. It was not a warship. It carried no weapons, no missiles, no guns of any kind. Instead, it carried negotiators, translators, and experts in galactic law. For 300 years, this was what human ships did. They talked. They listened. They helped others find peace. Katie Walsh walked up beside him. She was his tactical officer, though there was rarely anything tactical to do on a diplomatic ship. She was young, maybe 35, with sharp eyes that always seemed to be watching for danger that never came. "Another message from the Xanthir," she said quietly. "They're refusing to meet again," Jake sighed. The Xanthir were a problem. They were large reptilian creatures standing over 7 feet tall, covered in dark green scales. Their empire had been growing for the past 50 years, taking more and more space, pushing into areas where other species lived. Now they were pushing into human territory. 3 months ago, the Xanthir had attacked a group of human colony ships. These were civilian vessels, carrying families who wanted to start new lives on planets in the Outer Rim. The Xanthir captured 5 ships, taking over 3,000 humans prisoner. They claimed the territory belonged to them under some ancient law that nobody else recognized. Jake had been trying to negotiate their release ever since. The Xanthir kept making demands. First, they wanted humans to leave the entire sector. Then they wanted payment. Then they wanted technology. Every time Jake agreed to talk, they changed what they wanted. "What do they want now?" Jake asked. "They want all human colonies in the disputed zone to be abandoned. That's 42 worlds, Commander. Over 8 million people live there. They've been there for generations." Jake closed his eyes. This was getting worse. The Xanthir were testing humanity, pushing to see how far they could go. And why not? For 300 years, humans had never fought back, never raised a weapon, never responded to aggression with anything but more talking. Dr. Simon Price entered the bridge. He was the ship's historian, an old man with white hair and a gentle smile. But his smile was gone today. He carried a datapad and looked worried. "Commander, I need to show you something," Simon said. They moved to a private office off the bridge. Simon activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the air, showing humans in cages working in mines moving heavy equipment under the watch of Xanthir guards. "The Xanthir released these videos an hour ago," Simon explained. "They're broadcasting them across the entire Galactic Council network. They're showing what they're doing to our people." Jake watched in silence. He saw children no older than 10 or 12 carrying rocks. He saw elderly people struggling with labor that would be hard for young, strong workers. He saw humans being struck when they moved too slowly. "They think we're weak," Katie said from the doorway. She had followed them. "They think because we haven't fought anyone in 300 years, we can't fight. They think we've forgotten how." Simon looked at Jake with an expression that was hard to read. "Commander, you asked me to compile information about human history before we joined the Galactic Council. I've finished that report. How bad was it?" Jake asked quietly. "Worse than most species can imagine," Simon replied. "Earth had 2 world wars in the 20th century. In the first one, over 17 million people died. In the second one, over 70 million. We created weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. We built enough nuclear missiles to end all life on our planet several times over." Katie stepped closer. "The other species don't know this?" "No," Simon said. "When humanity joined the Galactic Council 300 years ago, we made a choice. We decided to leave that history behind. We destroyed our weapons. We converted our warships to colony vessels and trading ships. We became known as peacemakers because we chose to be peacemakers. But we remember," Jake said softly. "Deep down we remember." A message alert sounded. Katie checked her datapad and her face went pale. "Commander, you need to see this now." They returned to the bridge. On the main screen, a Xanthir official was making an announcement. The translation appeared in text below the image. "The human species has been given enough time to comply with our demands," the Xanthir said. "They have shown themselves to be weak and indecisive. Therefore, we are implementing a new policy. Every day that humans remain in the disputed territory, we will execute 10 human prisoners. This will continue until all humans leave our space." The screen changed. It showed 10 humans being led into a large room. Jake recognized the place from earlier videos. It was one of the mining facilities where prisoners were being held. What happened next would be remembered by every species in the galaxy for centuries to come. The Xanthir guards raised their weapons. There was no trial, no final words, no mercy. They simply executed all 10 prisoners while broadcasting it live to billions of viewers across hundreds of worlds. Jake stood frozen. He saw Katie's hands curl into fists. Simon closed his eyes. Around the bridge, every human crew member stopped what they were doing and watched in horror. The Xanthir official appeared on screen again. Humans have 1 week to begin evacuating the disputed zone. For every day of delay, 10 more will die. This is not a negotiation. This is a command. The transmission ended. The bridge was silent. Jake looked around at his crew. These were people who had spent their entire careers avoiding conflict, finding peaceful solutions, talking instead of fighting. He saw the same expression on every face. Something had changed. Something fundamental and irreversible. Katie spoke first. "Orders, Commander?" Jake took a deep breath. "Get me a secure line to Ambassador Lisa Chen on the Council homeworld. Highest priority. Then contact Earth Command. Tell them I'm requesting an emergency consultation with the Colonial Defense Authority." "The Colonial Defense Authority?" Katie repeated. "Sir, that organization hasn't been active in over 200 years. "It's about to be," Jake said quietly. The communication with Lisa Chen took only a few minutes to establish. She appeared on the screen looking as tired as Jake felt. She was 50 years old with gray in her dark hair, and she had represented humanity on the Galactic Council for the past 15 years. "I saw it," she said before Jake could speak. The entire council saw it. "They're in emergency session right now." "What are they saying?" Jake asked. Lisa's expression hardened. "Most of them are calling for more negotiations. Some are suggesting we give the Xanthir what they want. A few are saying this is an internal matter between 2 council members and the council shouldn't interfere." "Internal matter?" Katie burst out. "They just murdered our people on live broadcast." "I know," Lisa said, "but most species see us as pacifists. They think we'll accept this. They think we have no other choice." Jake and Lisa looked at each other for a long moment. They had worked together for years. They understood each other without words. "Lisa," Jake said carefully, "I'm going to ask you a question, and I need you to think very carefully before you answer. Are you prepared to authorize what comes next?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes. You understand what I'm asking?" "Jake, I've been an ambassador for 15 years. Before that, I studied history. I know what humanity was. I know what we're capable of. For 3 centuries, we chose peace. That was a choice, not a limitation. The Xanthir have made us choose again." Jake nodded slowly. "Then I recommend we proceed with Protocol 7. Lisa drew in a sharp breath. Protocol 7 was a contingency plan that had been written 300 years ago and never used. It was humanity's emergency response for a scenario exactly like this one, when peaceful options were exhausted and human lives were in immediate danger. "I'll need authorization from the Earth Council," Lisa said. "That will take time." "How much time?" 72 hours for a full vote. "But I can get emergency powers in 24. "Do it," Jake said. "In the meantime, I'm taking my ship to Earth. Katie, plot a course for home. Maximum speed." As the horizon's dawn turned toward Earth, Jake stood alone on the bridge after his crew had gone to their stations. Simon approached him quietly. "Do you think the galaxy is ready for this?" the old historian asked. Jake looked out at the stars, at the vast space between worlds where humans had traveled for 300 years as friends and helpers. "No," he said softly. "But they should have thought of that before they pushed us." Simon nodded. "I've been studying Earth's military history for months now, preparing for the possibility that someone might force this moment. Commander, there's something you should understand. When humans fought wars on Earth, they didn't just fight to win battles. They fought total wars. They mobilized entire populations. They converted every factory, every resource, every ounce of their civilization's capacity toward victory." "I know," Jake said. "The galaxy has never seen anything like it," Simon continued. "Most species fight limited wars with professional soldiers. Humans fight differently. When we commit to war, we commit completely, and we're about to remember how." The ship jumped to faster than light speed, leaving the diplomatic zone. The journey to Earth took 4 days. During that time, the galaxy watched and waited. The Xanthir kept their promise. executing 10 human prisoners each day and broadcasting every death. By the time Jake's ship reached Earth orbit, 40 innocent people were dead. Other species began to notice something strange. Human diplomatic ships across the galaxy were being recalled. Every single one. Ships that had been stationed at various outposts for decades suddenly turned toward Earth. Nobody knew why, but it made some species nervous. The krill were insect-like traders who controlled many of the galaxy's trade routes. They had always viewed humans as useful but weak. When human merchants started closing their shops and heading home, the krill found it curious. When human trade ships stopped accepting new contracts, they found it concerning. The Vortan Collective was a group of 5 species who shared territory and resources. They had been quietly discussing expansion into human-controlled space, seeing an opportunity while humans were distracted by the Xanther problem. But now their intelligence officers were reporting something unusual. Human colony worlds were increasing their defensive preparations. Jake stood in a conference room deep beneath Earth's surface. The room had not been used in 200 years. It was part of the Colonial Defense Headquarters, a building that most people thought was just a museum. Around the table sat 15 people. They were military officers, but they wore no uniforms. For 300 years, Earth had no military in the traditional sense. Instead, they had the Colonial Defense Authority, which mostly coordinated rescue operations and disaster response. But everyone in this room knew the authority's other purpose, the one that had never been needed until now. General Pete Hammond was the oldest person present. He was 75 with gray hair and sharp blue eyes. He had spent his entire career preparing for a war that everyone said would never come. "The Earth Council has voted," Hammond said. The vote was nearly unanimous. Protocol 7 is approved. Jake felt the weight of those words. Protocol 7 meant humanity was going to war for the first time in 300 years. "What are our capabilities?" Jake asked. A woman named Colonel Amy Rodriguez stood up. She was in charge of military technology development, a department that officially didn't exist. "We've been maintaining readiness protocols in secret," she explained. "Our shipyards can be converted to military production within 72 hours. We have blueprints for 16 different classes of warship, all based on current civilian technology but redesigned for combat." She activated a holographic display. Images of ships appeared in the air above the table. They looked similar to human civilian vessels, but Jake could see the differences. Heavier armor, weapon mounting points, advanced sensor arrays. "Our mining lasers can be converted to weapons," Amy continued. "They're designed to cut through asteroids, which means they'll cut through any known ship armor. Our cargo vessels have engines powerful enough to outrun most military ships. Our construction equipment can be modified to produce missiles, defense systems, and automated weapons platforms." "How long until we have a fleet?" Hammond asked. "The first warship will be ready in 2 weeks," Amy said. "Within 2 months, we can have 30 combat-ready vessels. Within 6 months, over 200. Jake looked at the others around the table. 2 weeks is too long. The Xanther are killing 10 people every day. That's 70 more deaths before we can do anything." Hammond nodded grimly. "I know, but we need to be ready. If we rush this and fail, the Xanther will know we're weak. We need to hit them hard enough that they understand immediately what they've done." Katie, who had accompanied Jake to the meeting, spoke up. "What about personnel? We don't have trained combat crews. Most humans alive today have never even thought about fighting a war." A man named Captain Greg Sullivan smiled slightly. It was not a pleasant smile. "That's where you're wrong, Lieutenant. We have over 50 million people with combat training. They've been training their entire lives, they just didn't know it was combat training." Katie frowned. "I don't understand." "Think about it," Greg explained. "Every ship captain knows how to navigate through dangerous situations. Every engineer knows how to keep systems running under pressure. Every doctor knows how to work in emergencies. We've been teaching coordination, teamwork, and crisis management for 300 years. We just called it civilian training instead of military training." Simon, who had also come to the meeting, added, "And we have something else. We have 300 years of studying other species. We know their tactics, their ships, their weaknesses. We've been mediating their wars and disputes for centuries. We know how they fight." Hammond stood up. "Commander Morrison, I'm giving you a choice. You can return to diplomatic duties, or you can take command of our first warship. The vessel is designated Reckoning. She'll be the fastest, most advanced ship in the fleet." Jake didn't hesitate. "I'll take the command." Good, Hammond said. Captain Sullivan will be in charge of the Marine contingent. Lieutenant Walsh, you'll serve as tactical officer. Dr. Price, you'll be our strategic advisor. Your knowledge of military history will be invaluable. Over the next 2 weeks, Earth transformed. It happened quietly, without announcement or fanfare. Shipyards that had been building colony vessels and cargo ships suddenly switched to different designs. Factories changed what they were producing. Training facilities that taught asteroid mining techniques started teaching weapons operation. The Galactic Council watched with growing unease. Ambassador Lisa Chen had addressed them 5 days earlier, and her speech was being analyzed by every species with intelligence services. She had stood before the council chamber and spoken calmly, but her words carried weight. She explained that humanity had chosen peace 300 years ago. They had studied their own history, looked at centuries of warfare on Earth, and decided to be different. They had destroyed their weapons, converted their warships, and dedicated themselves to helping others find peaceful solutions. But then she had said something that made every species in the chamber go silent. She talked about Earth's history. She described the world wars, the nuclear weapons, the fact that humans had nearly destroyed themselves. She explained that humanity didn't join the galaxy as innocent children. They joined as warriors who chose to become peacemakers. The Xanthir representative had laughed at this. He called it propaganda, empty threats from a species too weak to fight. He demanded that humans comply with Xanthir demands immediately or face consequences. Lisa had looked at him with cold eyes. The consequences are not ours to face, she had said quietly. They are yours. You have forced humanity to make a choice we hoped never to make again. We will retrieve our people. We will ensure this never happens again. And when we are done, every species in this galaxy will understand that humanity's 300 years of peace was a gift, not a weakness. Now, as the 2 weeks came to an end, Jake stood in a shipyard orbiting Earth. Before him was the Reckoning. She was beautiful in a deadly way, larger than any civilian vessel, sleek and dark, covered in armor that could withstand incredible damage. Her weapons were hidden behind panels that made her look almost peaceful until they opened. Katie walked up beside him. She's impressive, she said softly. She's necessary, Jake replied. They boarded the ship along with a crew of 200. These were people from all walks of life. Ship captains who had transported cargo, engineers who had built stations, scientists who had studied physics. All of them had volunteered. All of them understood what they were about to do. Greg Sullivan stood in the Marine Bay addressing his troops. There were 50 Marines aboard, soldiers who had trained in secret their entire careers. They wore armor that looked advanced even by galactic standards. They carried weapons that no other species had seen before. Listen up, Greg said. For 300 years, humanity has been peaceful. We've helped others, we've avoided conflict, and we've built a reputation as diplomats. That reputation is about to change. The Xanthir think we're weak. They're about to learn differently. On the bridge, Jake took his position in the captain's chair. It felt different from the diplomatic vessel he had commanded for 30 years. This chair was designed for war. Around him, his crew took their stations. Katie at tactical, Seaman at strategy, a pilot named Eric Hayes at the helm. All stations report ready, Katie said. Jake took a deep breath. In orbit around Earth, 15 more warships waited. They would all travel together to the disputed zone where the Xanthir held human prisoners. It would take 5 days to get there. 5 more days of executions. 50 more deaths. But after that, the Xanthir would face something they had never encountered before. They would face humanity not as diplomats or traders or peaceful explorers. They would face humanity as warriors. Take us out, Jake ordered. The Reckoning moved away from Earth, followed by the rest of the fleet. They accelerated smoothly, their engines more powerful than anything the galaxy had seen from human ships before. As they jumped to faster-than-light speed, Earth fell away behind them. Simon stood beside Jake's chair. The galaxy is watching, he said quietly. Every species with sensors is tracking our fleet. They know something is happening. They just don't know what yet. The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the disputed zone. Ahead of them, spread across several million kilometers of space, was the Xanthir defensive line. 43 warships arranged in a formation that had served them well for centuries. On the Reckoning's bridge, Katie studied the tactical display. They're in a standard defensive shell pattern, she reported. Heavy cruisers in the center, destroyers forming a perimeter, fast attack ships ready to intercept. It's a strong formation. Simon looked at the formation and smiled slightly. It's the same pattern they used in their war with the Kelvin Federation 50 years ago, and the same one they used against the Prime Alliance before that. They don't adapt. They found something that works and they stick with it. Jake stood from his chair. Open a channel to the Xanther commander. Wide broadcast. I want everyone in this system to hear this. Katie worked her console. Channel open, sir. Jake spoke clearly and calmly. This is Commander Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Reckoning. We are here to retrieve our people, release all human prisoners immediately, and withdraw your forces from this system. You have 1 hour to comply. The response came quickly. The Xanther commander appeared on the main screen. He was large even for his species, over 8 feet tall, with dark scales and cold yellow eyes. His name was War Leader Krathix, and he had commanded Xanther fleets for 30 years. Humans, Krathix said with clear contempt. You dare approach with your tiny fleet? I have 43 warships. You have 16. I have fought and won 20 major battles. You have fought none. Turn back now and I will kill only 10 prisoners today instead of 20. Jake's expression didn't change. I gave you 1 hour. The time starts now. He closed the channel. The bridge crew waited in tense silence. Katie checked her sensors. Sir, they're not withdrawing. They're moving into an attack formation. Expected, Jake said. Simon, show me the recordings of Xanther battle tactics. Holographic displays appeared, showing battles from Xanther history. Jake watched carefully. The Xanther always did the same thing. They advanced in formation, used their heavy ships to absorb damage while their fast ships flanked the enemy. They relied on armor, numbers, and aggression. They're going to try to surround us, Jake said. Katie, prepare firing solutions for the following targets. He pointed at specific ships on the tactical display. These 6 destroyers on the left flank. When the battle starts, I want them gone in the first 30 seconds. Katie worked quickly. Solutions locked. Sir, those ships are heavily armored. Our weapons are powerful, but taking out 6 ships in 30 seconds. Trust the weapons, Jake said. They're designed to cut through asteroids. Asteroids are harder than ship armor. Throughout the fleet, similar conversations were happening. Human captains studied their enemies, identified weaknesses, and prepared tactics. This was what humans did well. They adapted. They planned. They thought several steps ahead. 30 minutes passed. The Xanther fleet began moving forward. Krathix sent another message. His final offer for humans to retreat. Jake ignored it. At the 1 hour mark, Jake gave the order. All ships engage. What happened next would be studied by military academies across the galaxy for centuries. The human fleet didn't charge forward. They didn't form a defensive line. Instead, they scattered, each ship moving in a different direction at high speed. The Xanther were confused. This wasn't how space battles worked. Fleets stayed together for mutual support. These human ships were separating, making themselves vulnerable. Krathix ordered his ships to pursue, to surround and destroy the scattered human vessels. That was his mistake. The human ships weren't scattering randomly. They were executing a carefully coordinated plan. Each ship knew exactly where every other ship would be at every moment. They had practiced this for 2 weeks, running simulations until it was perfect. The Reckoning accelerated hard, moving faster than the Xanther expected. Their sensors registered the speed, and several commanders reported it must be an error. No ship that size could move that fast, but it could, and it did. Katie's fingers moved across her weapons console. Target lock on all 6 destroyers, firing. The Reckoning's main weapons came online. They were called mining lasers, but that name didn't do them justice. These were precision instruments designed to cut through solid rock and metal. In industrial applications, they could carve up an asteroid in hours. In combat, they were devastating. 6 beams of coherent light reached across space at the speed of light itself. There was no warning, no time to dodge. The beams struck the Xanther destroyers with perfect accuracy, cutting through armor that had withstood conventional weapons for decades. The first destroyer exploded, then the second. The third tried to raise additional shields, but the beam cut through them. 4th, 5th, 6th all gone in 28 seconds. The Xanther fleet hesitated. 6 ships destroyed in less than half a minute. That wasn't possible, but they had just watched it happen. Krathix roared orders. His remaining ships regrouped and returned fire. Missiles launched, energy weapons discharged. The space between the fleets filled with deadly fire. But the human ships were already somewhere else. They moved like nothing the Xanthir had seen before, accelerating, decelerating, changing direction with precision that seemed impossible. What the Xanthir didn't know was that human ships had been designed for navigating asteroid fields and avoiding space debris. They could make course corrections that would tear apart a normal military vessel. The missiles the Xanthir fired were fast, but human point defense systems were faster. These systems were originally designed to clear microdebris from flight paths. They tracked thousands of small objects and eliminated them with quick, precise shots. Missiles were just bigger debris. Katie watched her defensive systems work. Point defense at 98% efficiency. They can't get through. Jake studied the battle display. The Xanthir were trying to regroup, but they were fighting as individuals now, their formation broken. That was what he wanted. All ships execute pattern Delta. The human fleet shifted again. Now they were working in pairs, each pair targeting a single Xanthir ship. It was a classic tactic from Earth's naval warfare history. Two smaller ships could defeat one larger ship by attacking from different angles, dividing the defender's attention. Greg Sullivan contacted the bridge from the Marine Bay. "Commander, my teams are ready for boarding operations." "Hold position," Jake ordered. "We don't need to board enemy ships. We need to get to the station where they're holding our people." Another 5 Xanthir ships exploded. The human vessels focused fire with devastating efficiency. When 2 human ships attacked one Xanthir vessel, that vessel had seconds to live. Krathix watched his fleet being destroyed and couldn't believe it. His ships were veteran warships. His crews were experienced warriors, but they were being defeated by a species that hadn't fought a war in 300 years. He sent a priority message to the Xanthir homeworld. "The humans are not what we thought. Their technology is advanced. Their tactics are sophisticated. They fight like—" He paused, searching for words. "They fight like they've done this before. Many times before." Back on the Reckoning, Simon was providing constant tactical analysis. "Commander, the Xanthir are trying to form a defensive position around the station. If we let them establish that position, getting our people out will be harder." "Agreed," Jake said. "Katie, I need a path to the station. Something fast and direct." Katie worked her console, running calculations. "Sir, there are 12 Xanthir ships between us and the station. To get through, we'd have to go right through their formation." "Then that's what we'll do," Jake said. "All ships follow the Reckoning. Full speed, we're going through." The human fleet regrouped and accelerated. They formed a wedge formation with the Reckoning at the point. It was an ancient military tactic, older than space travel, older than aircraft. It was something human armies had used thousands of years ago on Earth. The Xanthir saw them coming and prepared to meet them head-on. This was the kind of fight they understood. Direct confrontation. Strength against strength. But they still didn't understand what they were facing. The human ships didn't slow down. They didn't hesitate. They punched through the Xanthir line like it wasn't there. The Reckoning's armor absorbed hits that would have crippled other ships. Her weapons fired continuously, clearing a path. Behind her, the rest of the human fleet followed, each ship protecting the others, working together like parts of a single organism. In less than 3 minutes, they were through. The station where human prisoners were being held was now in front of them, and most of the Xanthir fleet was behind them. Jake opened a channel to the station. "This is Commander Morrison. Release all human prisoners immediately. You have 5 minutes." There was no response from the station. 4 minutes, Jake said calmly. Behind them, the Xanthir fleet was turning around, trying to get back into the fight. But they were disorganized now, their careful formation destroyed. 3 minutes. Katie watched the tactical display. "Sir, the station has defensive weapons." "They're powering up." "Let them," Jake said. 2 minutes. Greg contacted the bridge again. "Commander, let me take my Marines in. We can fight through the station and get our people out." The rescued prisoners arrived on human ships in a state of shock. Over 3,000 people who had been captive for weeks, forced to work in terrible conditions, suddenly found themselves safe. Medical teams rushed to help them. Doctors treated injuries. Counselors offered support. And every single person asked the same question: what happened? Jake walked through one of the medical bays on the Reckoning. He saw children reunited with parents, saw elderly people receiving care, saw the physical and emotional damage the Xanthir had caused. Each person he passed strengthened his resolve. This could never happen again. Katie found him there an hour later. "Commander, we're receiving messages from Earth. The entire fleet is ready. Admiral Hammond is asking for your recommendation. Jake looked at her. How big is the fleet now? 35 warships. More are being completed every day. We also have support vessels, supply ships, and mobile repair stations. It's the largest human military force in 300 years. Jake nodded slowly. Tell the Admiral we're going forward. The Xanthar need to understand this won't stop until they surrender. News of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light travel. Every species with communication networks was talking about what happened. The Xanthar, who had never lost a battle, had been defeated by humans. Not just defeated, they had been destroyed. The Krill traders were the first to respond. They sent a message to all human colonies and trading posts offering free passage and priority docking. The message was clear. The Krill did not want trouble with humanity. The Vortan Collective called an emergency meeting and unanimously voted to abandon all plans for expansion near human space. Their military analysts had watched recordings of the battle and concluded that fighting humans would be costly at best. Impossible at worst. Even the Etherian Empire, the most powerful military force in the galaxy, took notice. Their war council gathered to study the battle tactics. One of their generals, a veteran of 50 campaigns, watched the recordings 3 times before speaking. They fight like veterans, he said quietly, but they have no recent war experience. How is this possible? His intelligence officer provided an answer. We received a data package from the human ambassador. It contains their military history. General, you need to see this. What the Etherians saw shocked them. Earth's history was filled with wars, not the limited conflicts between professional armies that most species practiced, but total wars involving entire populations, wars that lasted years or even decades, battles where millions died. Humans had fought each other with such intensity that they had nearly destroyed their own planet. The Etherian general finished reading and sat back. They're not inexperienced, he said. They learned everything about war before they reached the stars. They just chose not to use that knowledge. Until now. Meanwhile, the human fleet prepared to move deeper into Xanthar territory. Jake held a meeting with all ship captains via video conference. 35 faces appeared on screens around the bridge. The Xanthar Empire has 3 major military installations, Jake explained, highlighting locations on a star map. Their main fleet base, their command center, and their military shipyard. Our objective is to destroy their capacity to wage war. One captain, a woman named Helen Costa, asked the obvious question. Are we planning to invade Xanthar worlds? No, Jake said firmly. We're not conquerors. We're here to end a threat. We'll destroy military targets only. Civilian areas are off limits. Our goal is to make the Xanthar incapable of attacking anyone else, not to harm their population. Simon, who was present at the meeting, added context. This is important. Throughout Earth's history, the difference between liberation and conquest often came down to how an army treated civilians. We need to show the galaxy that humans can be powerful without being cruel. The fleet moved out 3 days later. They traveled together this time, all 35 ships in a formation that was both defensive and intimidating. As they passed through systems controlled by other species, those species watched nervously. Some planets went on alert. Some ships fled. Nobody tried to stop them. Krathix, the Xanthar war leader who had survived the first battle, returned to his homeworld. He reported directly to the High Council, the group of 5 Xanthar who ruled their empire. The humans are coming, he told them. I recommend we negotiate. The council members were outraged. Xanthar did not negotiate from weakness. They had built their empire through strength and conquest. To surrender now would show weakness to every species in the galaxy. Gather all available ships, the High Council ordered. Prepare the home fleet for battle. The humans have won one fight. They will not win again. Krathix wanted to argue, but he knew it was pointless. The High Council had never lost a war. They could not imagine losing one now. He left to prepare his forces, but he had seen what human ships could do. He knew what was coming. The human fleet arrived at the Xanthar fleet base 2 weeks later. This time, they faced over 70 Xanthar warships. It was the largest concentration of Xanthar military power in one place. Jake issued his standard warning. Release any prisoners you hold and stand down your weapons. You have 1 hour. The Xanthar response was to open fire immediately. The battle that followed was different from the first one. The Xanthar had learned from their defeat. They didn't use traditional formations. They attacked from multiple angles, They tried to overwhelm human point defense with waves of missiles. They focused fire on individual ships, trying to destroy them one at a time. But humans had also learned. They had studied the first battle and adjusted their tactics. Now they worked in groups of 3 instead of 2. They used better coordination. They anticipated Xanthir moves and countered them before they fully developed. Katie managed the Reckoning's defensive systems, while simultaneously directing fire from 2 other ships in their group. "This is what we trained for," she said, her voice calm despite the chaos around them. "Multiple threats, multiple targets, constant adaptation." Simon watched the tactical display and provided running analysis. "They're trying a pincer movement. Classic tactic. It works against species with slower communications. But our ships are networked. We can see it coming and adjust." Jake gave orders calmly, directing the fleet like a conductor leading an orchestra. "Group Alpha, shift to intercept the flanking force. Group Beta, maintain pressure on their center. Group Gamma, I need you to punch through and take out that command ship." The battle lasted 3 hours. It was longer than the first battle, harder fought, with the Xanthir showing more desperation and creativity. But the outcome was never in doubt. Human ships were faster, their weapons more accurate, their coordination perfect. Most importantly, they adapted to every change in Xanthir tactics within minutes. When it ended, the Xanthir fleet base was gone. 53 of their 70 warships were destroyed. The rest retreated in disorder. The human fleet had lost no ships, though several had taken damage. Greg Sullivan's Marines finally got their chance when they boarded the crippled Xanthir command station. They moved through the corridors efficiently, securing areas and freeing the handful of human prisoners still held there. The Xanthir soldiers they encountered mostly surrendered without fighting. They had seen what human ships could do and had no interest in discovering what human soldiers could do. Jake stood on the bridge of the Reckoning and looked at the aftermath. Debris floated in space. Rescue pods drifted away from destroyed ships. He took no pleasure in the destruction, but he felt no regret either. "This was necessary," Katie approached him. "Sir, we're receiving a message from the Xanthir homeworld. It's the High Council. They want to talk." "Not yet," Jake said. "We still have 2 more targets. The command center and the shipyard." The fleet moved to the command center next. This was the facility that coordinated all Xanthir military operations. It was heavily defended, surrounded by automated weapons platforms and shield generators. Jake gave them his warning. The Xanthir inside refused to surrender. Jake gave the order to attack. This battle was shorter. The automated defenses were sophisticated, but they were programmed to fight conventional attacks. Human ships used unconventional tactics, approaching from unexpected angles, using precision strikes to disable systems without destroying the entire facility. Within an hour, the command center was offline. Its weapons were gone, its shields down, its communications severed. Jake sent in Marines to secure the facility and ensure no one was hurt unnecessarily. The final target was the military shipyard. This was where the Xanthir built their warships, a massive construction facility orbiting their industrial moon. Destroying it would take away their ability to rebuild their fleet. As the human fleet approached, they received another message from the High Council. This time the tone was different. No threats, no demands. Just a simple request to talk. Jake considered for a moment, then opened the channel. 5 Xanthir faces appeared on the screen, the members of the High Council. They looked older than Krathix, their scales darker, their eyes harder. But now those eyes showed something new, fear. "What do you want?" one of them asked. Jake's answer was simple. "Surrender. Complete and unconditional. You will release any remaining prisoners. You will pay reparations to the..." 6 months after the Xanthir surrender, Jake stood in the Galactic Council chamber. It was his first time back since the war began. The room looked the same, circular with seats arranged in tiers for representatives of 200 species. But everything felt different now. Ambassador Lisa Chen sat in the human section, but today Jake was the one speaking. He had been asked to explain what happened to help the Council understand the new reality. 300 years ago, Jake began, humanity made a choice. We had just developed faster-than-light travel. We discovered we weren't alone in the universe, and we decided who we wanted to be. He activated a holographic display showing Earth's history. Images appeared of ancient battles, medieval wars, world wars, nuclear weapons. The Council members watched in silence. "This is what we were," Jake continued. "For thousands of years, humans fought each other. We developed weapons that could destroy cities. We created tactics that could win wars across entire continents. We learned to mobilize our entire civilization for conflict. The images changed, showing humans destroying their weapons, converting warships to civilian vessels, joining the Galactic Council. We chose to be different. We chose peace, not because we couldn't fight, but because we understood the cost of war too well. For 300 years, we worked as diplomats, traders, explorers. We helped others solve their problems without violence. Many of you came to think of us as naturally peaceful, as if we had never known war. Jake paused and looked around the chamber. The Xanthir made a terrible mistake. They assumed our peace meant weakness. They captured our people, killed our civilians, and broadcast it as if we would do nothing. They forced us to remember what we had chosen to forget. The final images showed the battles, the swift human victory, the Xanthir surrender. We defended our people with minimal loss of life on both sides, Jake said. We could have destroyed the Xanthir Empire completely. We chose not to. That's the difference between knowing how to wage war and wanting to wage war. Humans know how, but we don't want to. A representative from the Vortan Collective stood up. What happens now? Will humans maintain a military force? Will you use it to expand your territory? Lisa Chen stood to answer this question. Yes, we will maintain a military. We will never again be unable to protect our people. But no, we will not expand through conquest. Earth's policy remains focused on peace and cooperation. The difference is that now our peace is backed by strength. An Etherian general spoke next. Your tactics were impressive. Your technology is advanced. But what impressed me most was your coordination. How did you achieve such perfect cooperation between ships with crews who had never fought together before? Jake smiled slightly. We've been training for it our entire lives. Every civilian ship captain learns to navigate dangerous situations. Every engineer learns to work under pressure. Every crew learns to coordinate with other ships for rescue operations and construction projects. We just applied civilian skills to military purposes. Simon, who sat in the audience section, added, humans are natural cooperators. It's how we survived on Earth. When we face challenges too big for individuals, we work together. That doesn't change in war. If anything, it becomes more important. The Krill representative raised a tentacle to speak. What of the Xanthir? What happens to their empire now? They remain independent, Lisa said firmly. We are not occupiers. We have dismantled their military capabilities and established monitoring to ensure they rebuild peacefully. They are paying reparations to the families of victims. They are educating their population about what happened and why it was wrong, but they remain free to govern themselves. This surprised many council members. Most species who won wars either absorbed the defeated empire or maintained permanent military control. The idea of defeating an enemy and then leaving them to govern themselves was unusual. Jake explained further. We studied our own history carefully. Earth's worst wars often came from treating defeated enemies harshly. When you crush a people completely, they eventually rebuild with hatred in their hearts. When you defeat them but treat them fairly afterward, they can become allies. We hope the Xanthir will learn from this experience. The council session continued for hours. Representatives asked hundreds of questions. Some were curious, some were worried, some were calculating how this changed the balance of power in the galaxy. When it finally ended, Jake left the chamber exhausted, but satisfied. He had said what needed to be said. The galaxy now understood that humans were not to be trifled with, but also that they were not conquerors to be feared. Katie met him outside. How do you think it went? Time will tell, Jake replied. But I think we sent the right message. Back on Earth, life was slowly returning to normal. The shipyards that had built warships were converting back to civilian production, though they now maintained the capability to switch again if needed. The people who had served in the fleet were returning to their regular jobs, though many remained in the Colonial Defense Authority. Greg Sullivan stood at a new military academy, one of several being established across human space. He was teaching the next generation of defenders, sharing the lessons learned from the brief war with the Xanthir. The key to winning wasn't superior weapons or numbers, he told his students. It was coordination, adaptation, and understanding our enemy better than they understood themselves. We studied them for years while they ignored us. When the fighting started, we knew their tactics, their weaknesses, their limitations. They knew nothing about us. One student asked, "Sir, will we have to fight another war?" Greg considered the question carefully. I hope not. The best use of military force is to prevent war through deterrence. If other species know we can defend ourselves, they're less likely to attack. But if war comes again, you'll be ready. Simon returned to his work as a historian, but now with a new project. He was compiling a complete account of the war, including lessons learned and recommendations for the future. His book would become required reading not just for humans, but for military academies across the galaxy. In the introduction, he wrote, "Humanity's 300 years of peace were not wasted. During that time, we built relationships, developed technology, and learned about the galaxy. When forced to fight, we didn't do so blindly. We fought with purpose, precision, and restraint. We proved that a peaceful people can defend themselves without becoming the aggressor. This is the lesson we offer to the galaxy." Jake retired from military service 6 months later. He was offered promotions, positions of power, opportunities to become one of humanity's military leaders. He declined them all. Instead, he returned to diplomatic work, though his new role was different. Now, when he arrived at a dispute, both parties took him seriously. They knew that behind his peaceful words was a species that had proven its capability. His negotiations became more effective because parties understood that failure to reach agreement peacefully might lead to consequences. Katie continued as a tactical officer on a new diplomatic vessel. It was similar to the old Horizons Dawn, but with subtle differences. Better sensors, stronger shields, and the ability to call for military support if needed. She hoped to never need that capability, but she was glad it existed. 5 years after the war ended, Jake received an unexpected visitor. War leader Kratix requested a meeting. They met on a neutral station, in a quiet cafe where different species came to trade and talk. Kratix looked older, his scales duller, his movements slower. "I wanted to speak with you," he said quietly. "To understand. Understand what?" Jake asked. "Why you stopped? You could have destroyed my empire completely. You had the power. Instead, you took only what was necessary to ensure we couldn't threaten you again." Why? Jake thought about how to answer. Because destroying you wouldn't have solved anything. It would have created resentment, hatred, and eventually someone would have sought revenge. We wanted to end the immediate threat while giving your people a chance to change. Kratix was silent for a long moment. "We are changing." The High Council was replaced. New leaders are focusing on internal development rather than expansion. We are learning from what happened. "I'm glad to hear it," Jake said sincerely. "I have studied Earth's history," Kratix continued. "The wars you fought against yourselves were terrible. How did you survive them?" "By learning," Jake replied. "Every war taught us something. Eventually we learned that cooperation achieves more than conquest. It took thousands of years and countless deaths, but we learned." Kratix nodded slowly. "Perhaps my people can learn faster, having seen your example rather than having to discover it ourselves through centuries of suffering." "I hope so," Jake said. "That's why we chose mercy over vengeance." They talked for another hour, two former enemies trying to understand each other. When they parted, Jake felt something he hadn't expected to feel about a Xanthir: hope. 10 years after the war, Earth built a memorial station in orbit. It was dedicated to the humans who died during the Xanthir conflict, but also to the broader principle of defending peace. The inscription on the main monument read, "We chose peace for 300 years. When peace was denied us, we chose justice. May future generations never forget either choice, and may they have the wisdom to know when each is needed."